The alarm clock screams at 6:15 a.m., but Jake Thompson is already awake, staring at the water stain spreading across his bedroom ceiling. Another leak. Another expense he can't afford. His calloused hands rub his face as reality crashes down like it does every morning for the past 3 years. "Dad, my backpack has a hole in it." 8-year-old Connor's voice echoes from the hallway of their cramped 2-bedroom apartment. Jake forces himself out of bed, his construction-worn body protesting every movement. At 34, he feels 60. "Coming, buddy," Jake calls back, pulling on yesterday's jeans. The same jeans he's worn for 4 days straight because laundry costs money he doesn't have. In the kitchen, Connor stands beside his school backpack, his finger poking through a tear in the bottom corner. "Can you fix it, Dad?" Connor asks, his brown eyes wide with hope. Those eyes look exactly like his mother's did. Sarah's eyes. The memory hits Jake like a punch to the gut, just like it has every day for 3 years since that drunk driver took her away. "I'll tape it up for now," Jake says, grabbing the duct tape from their junk drawer. "We'll get you a new one soon." The lie tastes bitter. They can't afford a new backpack any more than they can afford to fix the leak or replace Jake's work boots that are held together with super glue. Connor nods, accepting his father's promise with the unwavering faith only children possess. While Jake patches the bag, Connor pours cereal into mismatched bowls. The milk is 3 days past expiration, but they can't waste it. "Don't forget about my spelling bee practice today," Connor says, climbing onto a kitchen chair. "Mrs. Martinez says I might make the team if I keep working hard." Jake's chest tightens. Connor's teacher has been pushing the boy toward advanced programs, but everything costs money. Registration fees, special supplies, transportation to events. "I'll help you practice tonight, I promise. You always help me," Connor says with absolute confidence. "You're the best dad ever." The words should warm Jake's heart, but instead they feel like weights. Best dad ever. He can barely keep a roof over their heads. His son wears second-hand clothes and eats expired food, while other kids have new everything. Jake checks his phone. 3 missed calls from his landlord. 2 text messages from the electric company. 1 email about Connor's lunch account being overdrawn. The walls feel like they're closing in. "Finish up, buddy. We need to leave in 5 minutes. Jake grabs his keys from the counter, noting the collection notice taped to his truck's windshield yesterday. The vehicle needs brake work, but he's been putting it off for 2 months. Every day he drives Connor to school, Jake prays the brakes hold out for 1 more trip. Connor rushes to brush his teeth while Jake stares at the stack of bills on the kitchen table. Mortgage 3 months behind. Electric bill in final notice. Connor's dental appointment cancelled because Jake couldn't take time off work. The medical bills from Sarah's accident still arrive monthly, demanding payment for treatments that couldn't save her life. His phone buzzes with a text from his foreman. Meeting at 7 a.m. Discussing layoffs. Jake's blood runs cold. Construction work is all he knows. Without this job, they'll lose everything. He's already working 6 days a week, picking up every overtime shift available. There's nothing left to give. Ready Dad, Connor appears with his patched backpack grinning despite their circumstances. The boy never complains, never asks for things he knows they can't afford. 8 years old and already learning that wanting something doesn't mean you'll get it. Jake forces a smile. "Let's go, champion." They climb into the aging pickup truck, Jake silently begging it to start. The engine turns over on the 3rd try, belching black smoke. Connor doesn't mention the smell or the way the truck shudders when they stop at red lights. He just chatters about his upcoming spelling test, excited about words like magnificent and extraordinary. As they drive toward Washington Elementary School, Jake passes houses with manicured lawns and new cars in the driveways. Families where both parents are alive and children don't worry about whether they'll have a home next month. Jake used to live in a neighborhood like this back when Sarah was alive, and he believed the future was full of possibilities. Now he's just trying to survive each day without everything falling apart. The school parking lot is crowded with SUVs and minivans, driven by parents in business clothes heading to jobs that pay enough to support their families. Jake's rusty pickup stands out like a sore thumb among the newer vehicles. "Have a great day, buddy," Jake says, hugging Connor tight. "I love you." "Love you too, Dad. Don't worry about the bills." Mom used to say that worrying doesn't change anything. It just makes your hair fall out faster. Connor grins, touching Jake's increasingly thin hair. Jake laughs despite everything. "Your mom was a smart lady." The smartest Connor agrees, shouldering his patched backpack. "See you tonight?" Jake watches his son disappear into the building, surrounded by children whose biggest worry is whether they remembered their homework. Connor fits in perfectly, but Jake knows the boy is already learning to hide their struggles, already developing the shame that comes with being poor in America. The drive to the construction site takes 23 minutes through morning traffic. Jake's hands grip the steering wheel as he thinks about the morning meeting. 3 families depend on him staying employed. If he loses this job, Connor will have to change schools. They'll lose the apartment. Everything Sarah worked for will be gone. Jake Thompson, widowed father and barely functioning adult, is 1 paycheck away from complete disaster. He just doesn't know that this ordinary Tuesday morning is about to change everything. Jake parks his truck in the school lot, checking his watch. 7 minutes before he needs to leave for the job site meeting that could determine their future. Connor has already disappeared into the building, but Jake sits for a moment, trying to gather the strength to face another day of uncertainty. That's when he sees her, an elderly woman, maybe late 60s, bent over the large green dumpster behind the school cafeteria. She's digging through garbage bags, pulling out cans and bottles, examining each item carefully before placing it in a rusty shopping cart. Jake has seen homeless people before, of course. Downtown Seattle is full of them. But there's something about this woman that stops him from immediately driving away. She's not dressed in the typical layers of mismatched clothing. Her coat, though obviously old and worn, was once expensive. Her grey hair is clean and pulled back neatly. Even from a distance, she carries herself with a dignity that seems at odds with her circumstances. Other parents are noticing her too. A woman in a Mercedes SUV rolls down her window and speaks to another mother walking by. Both women look disgusted, gesturing toward the dumpster. Jake can't hear their words, but their body language screams disapproval. The elderly woman seems oblivious to the stares. She's focused on her task, sorting through the school's discarded items with care. When she finds an aluminum can, she rinses it with water from a small bottle before adding it to her collection. Jake should leave. He's already cutting it close, and his job hangs in the balance. But something about the woman's methodical dignity keeps him frozen in place. She reminds him of his grandmother, who raised him after his parents died in a house fire when he was 12. Grandma Rose used to say that you could tell everything about a person by how they treated those who couldn't help them in return. A security guard emerges from the school building, walking purposefully toward the dumpster. The man's hand rests on his radio, his expression stern. "Ma'am, you can't be here," the guard calls out. "This is school property. You need to move along." The woman straightens slowly, her hands gripping the cart's handle. "I'm not causing any trouble," she says, her voice carrying a slight accent Jake can't place. "I'm simply collecting items that would otherwise go to waste." "It's against district policy," the guard replies, though his tone has softened slightly. "I'm sorry, but you'll have to leave." Jake finds himself getting out of his truck before he's consciously made the decision to intervene. His work boots crunch on the asphalt as he approaches the scene. "Excuse me," Jake says, addressing the security guard. "Is she actually breaking any laws?" The guard looks surprised to be questioned. "Well, no, but then maybe we could find a solution that works for everyone." Jake turns to the elderly woman, noting the intelligence in her clear blue eyes. Up close, he can see that her clothes, while worn, are clean and well-maintained. Her fingernails are neat, her posture straight despite her age. "I'm Jake Thompson," he says, extending his hand. "My son goes to school here." The woman hesitates before accepting his handshake. Her grip is firm, her skin soft despite the circumstances. "Eleanor Walsh," she says quietly. "I apologize for any disturbance." "No disturbance at all," Jake assures her. He looks at the security guard, who seems uncertain about how to handle the situation now that a parent has gotten involved. "Maybe Mrs. Walsh could come back after school hours when the kids aren't around." Eleanor Walsh shakes her head. "The collection trucks come before dawn. This is the only time to find anything useful." She glances at the disapproving parents in the parking lot, her cheeks flushing slightly. "I understand if my presence is problematic." Jake notices the slight tremor in her hands, the way she's trying to maintain composure despite obvious embarrassment. This woman has pride. Whatever circumstances brought her to digging through school dumpsters, she hasn't lost her sense of dignity. "How about we grab some coffee?" Jake hears himself saying. "There's a diner just down the street." "My treat." Eleanor's eyes widen in surprise. "Oh no, I couldn't impose. You've been kind enough already." It's no imposition, Jake insists, even as his mind calculates the cost. $10 he doesn't have for coffee and maybe a pastry. $10 that should go toward Connor's lunch account or the electric bill. But looking at Eleanor's thin frame and the careful way she's arranged the few cans in her cart, Jake knows he can't walk away. The security guard looks relieved that the situation is resolving peacefully. "Mrs. Walsh, if you need resources, there's a community center about 6 blocks east. They have programs for seniors." Eleanor nods politely but doesn't respond. Jake gets the impression she's heard similar suggestions before. "I'll follow you in my truck," Jake tells Eleanor, gesturing toward his battered pickup. The diner's called Maple Street Cafe. They make excellent pancakes. Eleanor hesitates again, clearly torn between pride and hunger. Finally, she nods. "That's very kind of you, Mr. Thompson, but I insist on paying my own way." Jake is about to argue when he sees the determination in her eyes. This woman has been reduced to collecting cans for money, but she's not ready to accept charity. Not yet. Of course he agrees. "See you there." As Eleanor pushes her cart toward the street, Jake catches sight of several parents watching from their cars. A few are taking pictures with their phones, probably documenting the vagrant problem to report to the school board. Others look disgusted that he's encouraging the woman's presence. Jake doesn't care. He thinks about Connor safely inside the school building, learning about kindness and compassion from books. This morning, Jake gets to practice those values in real life. The irony isn't lost on him. Here he is, barely able to afford groceries, offering to buy breakfast for a stranger. Sarah would have called it the right kind of crazy. As Jake follows Eleanor's slow progress down the sidewalk, her cart wheels squeaking rhythmically. He wonders what series of failures and tragedies led a woman with her obvious education and refinement to search dumpsters for recyclables. He's about to find out that Eleanor Walsh is harboring secrets that will change his life in ways he never imagined. Maple Street Cafe smells like bacon grease and burnt coffee, the kind of working-class diner where construction crews grab breakfast before dawn shifts. Red vinyl booths line the windows, their seats patched with duct tape. The linoleum floor has seen better decades, but the food is cheap and filling. Eleanor pushes her cart to a spot beside the building's side wall, carefully positioning it where she can keep watch through the window. Jake holds the door for her, noting how she pauses to thank him with old-fashioned courtesy. Inside, the morning rush is winding down. A few lingering customers read newspapers over coffee cups, ignoring the new arrivals. The waitress, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and comfortable shoes, looks up from wiping down the counter. "2 for breakfast?" she asks, grabbing menus without waiting for an answer. "Please," Jake says, following Eleanor to a booth near the back. He's hyper-aware of the other diners' glances, the way their eyes linger on Eleanor's worn coat and the careful way she arranges herself in the booth. Eleanor accepts the menu with both hands, studying it like it contains valuable information. Jake watches her scan the prices, her lips moving slightly as she calculates. When the waitress returns with coffee, Eleanor orders only toast and orange juice. That's all Jake asks. Their scrambled eggs are really good. And the hash browns. Toast is fine, Eleanor insists, but Jake catches the way her eyes lingered on the breakfast combination plates. Actually, could we get 2 of the number 3 specials, Jake tells the waitress. Eggs over easy for me, scrambled for the lady. Extra bacon on both. Eleanor starts to protest, but Jake holds up his hand. My grandmother always said that sharing a meal creates understanding between people. I'd be honored if you'd join me. The waitress, whose name tag reads Dolores, pours coffee into Jake's cup. You want cream for this, honey? She asks Eleanor, her tone gentler now. Please, Eleanor says softly. And thank you. When Dolores moves away, Eleanor wraps her hands around the warm coffee mug, breathing in the steam. You're very kind, Mr. Thompson. But I should explain that I'm not a charity case. Jake looks at her carefully. Even sitting in a rundown diner, there's something dignified about Eleanor Walsh. The way she holds her coffee cup, the precise way she speaks, the intelligence in her eyes. I didn't think you were, but everyone needs help sometimes. Eleanor's smile is sad. Yes, sometimes circumstances change in ways we never expect. She takes a sip of coffee, her hand steadying around the warmth. How long have you been a single father? The question catches Jake off guard. How did you... the way you spoke about your son at the school? The practiced efficiency in how you handled that situation? And no wedding ring. Eleanor's eyes are kind but observant. I have some experience recognizing people who are carrying burdens alone. Jake finds himself studying her more closely. Despite her circumstances, Eleanor possesses an awareness, an ability to read people that speaks to education and experience with the world. 3 years, Jake admits. My wife was killed by a drunk driver when Connor was 5. I've been figuring it out as I go ever since. Eleanor's expression softens. I'm so sorry. That must be incredibly difficult. Some days are harder than others, Jake acknowledges. He usually doesn't share personal information with strangers, but something about Eleanor invites honesty. What about you? Do you have family? Eleanor's pause stretches long enough that Jake wonders if he's overstepped. Finally, she speaks. I lost my husband 2 years ago. Heart attack. Our circumstances changed quite dramatically after his death. Before Jake can respond, Dolores returns with their breakfast plates. The eggs are perfect, the bacon crispy, the hash browns golden brown. Eleanor stares at her plate for a moment as if she can't quite believe it's real. Please eat, Jake encourages. It's much better hot. Eleanor takes a careful bite of eggs, then another. Jake pretends not to notice the way she savors each forkful, the careful way she makes the meal last. She eats like someone who doesn't know when her next full meal might come. This is delicious, Eleanor says. I haven't had eggs like this in quite some time. Dolores knows how to cook. Jake agrees. Connor and I come here sometimes on Saturday mornings when I get paid. He orders pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. Eleanor smiles at that. 8 years old, you said. What grade? 2nd grade. He's smart as a whip, loves school. His teacher says he might qualify for the gifted program, but there are fees involved, and I'm not sure we can... Jake trails off, realizing he's revealing more about their financial situation than he intended. Money is tight, Eleanor observes gently. I understand that challenge very well. They eat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Jake finds himself studying Eleanor, trying to reconcile her obvious education and refined mannerisms with her current circumstances. There's a story there, layers of complexity that don't match the simple narrative of an elderly woman who's fallen on hard times. Where are you staying? Jake asks. Do you have a place to sleep at night? Eleanor's fork pauses halfway to her mouth. There's a shelter downtown when there's space available. She doesn't meet his eyes. Sometimes the library stays open late. It's warm there, and they have comfortable chairs. The image of this dignified woman sleeping in library chairs makes Jake's chest tighten. He thinks about Connor safe in his own bed each night, even if that bed is in an apartment they might lose soon. Have you looked into senior housing social services? The waiting lists are quite long, Eleanor says, diplomatically. And the requirements are complex. Sometimes it's easier to manage on one's own. Jake recognizes the pride in her voice, the same stubborn independence that keeps him from asking his friends for help, even when the bills pile up higher than he can reach. When they finish eating, Jake signals Dolores for the check. Eleanor immediately reaches for a small coin purse, counting out bills slowly. "I insist on paying for my portion," she says firmly. "How about this?" Jake suggests. "You can get the tip." Eleanor considers this, recognizing the compromise that allows her to maintain some dignity. She places $3 on the table money that probably represents hours of collecting cans. Outside the diner, Eleanor reclaims her cart, checking to ensure nothing has been disturbed. Jake watches her organize the few recyclables she collected from the school dumpster. "Mrs. Walsh," he says impulsively, "would you mind if I checked on you tomorrow morning before I drop Connor off at school?" Eleanor looks surprised. "That's very thoughtful, but surely you have enough responsibilities without adding an old woman to your list." "It wouldn't be a burden," Jake assures her. "Maybe we could grab coffee again. I enjoyed talking with you," for the first time since he met her. Eleanor's composure cracks slightly. Her eyes grow bright with unshed tears, and she has to look away to compose herself. "That would be very nice," she says finally. "I'm usually at the bench near the school entrance around 7:30. Jake nods already, mentally adjusting his budget to account for daily coffee purchases. Sarah used to say that God put people in your path for a reason. Maybe Eleanor Walsh appeared in his life to remind him that his problems aren't unique, that kindness is free even when everything else costs money. As Eleanor pushes her cart down the sidewalk, moving with quiet dignity. Despite her circumstances, Jake realizes he's just made a commitment he can't really afford. But watching her disappear around the corner, he knows he couldn't have made any other choice. Sometimes doing the right thing means ignoring the practical voice in your head that calculates the cost of everything. Sometimes it means having faith that compassion will find a way to pay for itself. Jake sits in his truck outside the diner, watching Eleanor's figure disappear around the corner. His phone shows 7:47 a.m. The job site meeting started 17 minutes ago, and his foreman hates lateness almost as much as he hates excuses. But Jake can't bring himself to start the engine. Something about Eleanor Walsh bothers him, and not in a bad way. The contradiction between her obvious education and her current circumstances, the careful way she spoke, the intelligent questions she asked about Connor. She doesn't fit the profile of typical homeless individuals he's encountered. His phone buzzes with a text from Tony Ramirez. His crew leader, "Where are you?" "Morrison is pissed." Jake types back. "On my way. Emergency." It's not exactly a lie. Meeting Eleanor felt like an emergency of the heart. The kind Sarah used to say happened when the universe was trying to teach you something important. The drive to the job site takes 12 minutes through morning traffic. Jake uses the time to prepare his excuse, settling on a version of the truth that won't sound completely irresponsible. He'll tell Morrison that he was helping resolve a situation at Connor's school. Hartwell Construction is building a new shopping center on the outskirts of Seattle, the kind of project that means steady work for months if Jake can keep his position. The parking lot is full of pickup trucks and work vans, men standing around in hard hats drinking coffee from thermos bottles. Jake spots Morrison immediately. The man stands 6'4", weighs maybe 250, and has the kind of permanent scowl that comes from 30 years of managing construction crews. He's talking to a group of workers near the trailer that serves as the site office. Thompson Morrison's voice carries across the lot like a foghorn. "Nice of you to join us." Jake grabs his hard hat and tool belt from the truck, jogging toward the group. Sorry, Mr. Morrison. Had to handle something at my son's school. Morrison's scowl deepens. Your kid sick? No, sir. Security situation. I helped resolve it. Technically true, Jake tells himself. Well, now that you're here, maybe you'd like to hear about the changes we're making. Morrison's sarcasm could cut steel. Corporate's worried about the budget. We're cutting 6 positions effective Friday. The words hit Jake like cold water. 6 positions. The job site employs 18 men total. 1/3 of the crew is about to lose their livelihood. How are you deciding who stays? Asks Frank Kowalski, a father of 4, who's worked for Hartwell for 8 years. Performance, reliability, attitude. Morrison says, looking directly at Jake. Men who show up on time, follow instructions, don't cause problems. Jake's stomach drops. Being late this morning just painted a target on his back. With Connor depending on him, he can't afford to lose this job. The morning passes in a haze of anxiety. Jake works harder than usual, taking on extra tasks, staying focused, despite the worry eating at his concentration. During lunch break, he sits alone in his truck, calculating their budget for the 100th time. Rent, $200. Electric, $180. Phone, $85. Connor's school lunch account, $45. Gas for the truck, $120. Groceries, $200 if he's careful. Medical insurance, $340. The math never works out. Even if Jake keeps his job, they're falling behind every month. And now he's committed to buying Eleanor coffee every morning. Maybe $5 a day, $35 a week. Money he doesn't have for a woman he just met. But Jake can't regret the decision. Eleanor's face when he offered to check on her tomorrow, the way her eyes filled with gratitude and something that looked like hope. When had someone last shown interest in her well-being? His phone buzzes with a text from Connor's teacher. Connor mentioned you helped someone at school this morning. That was very kind. He's proud of his dad. Jake smiles despite his worry. Connor must have seen Eleanor from the classroom window, watched Jake intervene with the security guard. 8 years old, and the boy already understands the importance of standing up for people who can't defend themselves. The afternoon drags on. Jake focuses on his work, trying to demonstrate his value to Morrison and the crew. When 5 o'clock finally arrives, he's exhausted, but satisfied that he's done his best to secure his position. Driving to pick up Connor from after-school care, Jake makes a decision. Tomorrow morning, he'll meet Eleanor at the bench as promised. He'll buy her coffee and listen to whatever stories she wants to share. He'll treat her with the dignity and respect she deserves, regardless of how much it costs. Some things are more important than money. Sarah taught him that back when they were newlyweds living in a studio apartment, sharing ramen noodles and big dreams. They'd had almost nothing then, but they'd been rich in the ways that mattered. Connor is waiting outside the school building with his patched backpack, grinning when he sees Jake's truck. Dad, I heard you helped that lady this morning. Connor climbs into the passenger seat, bubbling with excitement. Mrs. Martinez said you did the right thing. She said not enough people stand up for others anymore. Mrs. Martinez is a smart teacher. Jake agrees. What else did you learn today? We studied about community helpers. Police officers, firefighters, teachers, doctors. Connor pauses, considering. I think you're a community helper too, Dad. You helped that lady when other people just drove away. Jake's throat tightens. Sometimes helping others is the most important thing we can do, even when it's not easy. Is that why Mom always gave food to hungry people? Jake remembers Sarah keeping granola bars in her purse, handing them to homeless individuals they encountered downtown. She'd say that everyone deserves to eat, that hunger doesn't distinguish between the worthy and unworthy. Yes, buddy. Your mom believed that kindness was never wasted. I want to help too, Connor announces. Can I meet the lady tomorrow? I want to tell her about my spelling bee practice. Jake hesitates. Getting Connor involved complicates things, but looking at his son's earnest face, Jake realizes that shielding the boy from the reality of poverty and homelessness won't teach him the compassion Sarah tried to instill in both of them. "We'll see," Jake says. "Maybe she'd like to hear about your spelling words." That evening, after Connor finishes his homework and they've shared a dinner of mac and cheese with hot dogs, Jake sits on their small balcony looking at the city lights. Tomorrow morning he'll begin a routine he can't afford with a woman he barely knows. But tonight, for the first time in months, Jake feels like he's doing something that would make Sarah proud. Something that might teach Connor that wealth isn't measured in bank account balances, but in the richness of human connections. Eleanor Walsh needs a friend, and Jake Thompson has friendship to spare, even if it costs him his last $20. 3 weeks into their morning routine, Jake's alarm goes off at 600 a.m. instead of 6:15. The extra 15 minutes has become Eleanor time, built into his schedule as naturally as brushing his teeth or making Connor's lunch. This Tuesday morning starts like all the others now. Jake checks his dwindling bank balance on his phone, $127.43, then calculates how much he can spend at the cafe. $4 for Eleanor's coffee and toast, $3 for his own coffee. $7 that represents 30 minutes of construction work after taxes. Dad, don't forget Grandma Ellie likes her toast cut diagonally. Connor calls from the bathroom where he's brushing his teeth with the enthusiasm only an 8-year-old can muster. Grandma Ellie. Somehow over these 3 weeks, Connor has decided that Eleanor Walsh is his honorary grandmother. Eleanor hasn't discouraged the nickname, and Jake admits he finds it endearing. Connor never knew his real grandparents. Jake's grandmother Rose died when Connor was 3, and Sarah's parents live in Florida and visit once a year if the family is lucky. I remember Jake calls back. And she likes grape jelly, not strawberry. Because grape jelly reminds her of her mother's garden, Connor recites clearly proud of his growing knowledge of Eleanor's preferences. Jake smiles as he gets dressed. Connor has become Eleanor's most devoted friend, greeting her each morning with the kind of uncomplicated affection children reserve for adults who listen to them with genuine interest. Eleanor, for her part, seems to bloom under Connor's attention, her face lighting up whenever she sees the boy running toward their bench. The bench. That's what they call it now. Their bench. The green wooden bench near the school entrance where Eleanor waits every morning at exactly 7:30, rain or shine. She's never late, never absent. Jake has begun to wonder what she does with the rest of her day, but he's learned not to pry too deeply into Eleanor's circumstances. This morning is crisp with that Seattle chill that promises rain later. Jake and Connor drive to school with the windows cracked open, listening to Connor practice his spelling words for the advanced placement test coming up next week. Magnificent. 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 Perfect, Jake says. What's magnificent mean? Something really, really awesome. Like how you help Grandma Ellie every morning. That's magnificent. Jake's chest tightens. Connor sees their daily routine as an act of magnificence, not the financial strain it actually represents. The boy doesn't know that Jake has been skipping lunch most days to afford their morning cafe visits, or that the electric bill is now 6 weeks overdue. They pull into the school parking lot, and Jake immediately spots Eleanor at their bench. Today she's wearing the same worn coat as always, but her grey hair is arranged differently, twisted into an elegant bun that makes her look refined despite her circumstances. Connor jumps out of the truck before Jake has fully stopped running toward Eleanor with his backpack bouncing behind him. Grandma Ellie. Guess what Mrs. Martinez said I might get into the advanced reading program if I pass my test? Eleanor stands to embrace Connor, her face transforming with genuine joy. That's wonderful news, dear one. You've been working so hard on those spelling words. Jake approaches more slowly, carrying the coffee and pastry bag from Maple Street Cafe. Over these 3 weeks, he's learned Eleanor's preferences: coffee with cream and sugar, wheat toast with grape jelly, and always a small orange juice because she says the vitamin C helps her stay healthy. Good morning, Eleanor. Jake says, settling onto the bench beside her. Sleep well. It's a question he asks every morning, though he's never entirely sure he wants to know the real answer. Eleanor's responses are always diplomatic. Well enough, or... The night passed peacefully. Jake suspects she's still sleeping in the downtown shelter when space is available in library chairs when it's not. Very well, thank you. Eleanor accepts her coffee gratefully, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. And you look tired. Jake does feel tired. The stress of potentially losing his job, combined with the financial strain of their daily cafe visits, has been affecting his sleep. But looking at Eleanor's concerned face, Jake realizes she's been studying him just as carefully as he's been observing her. Just busy with work, he says. Construction keeps me on my toes. Connor settles between them on the bench, pulling out a book from his backpack. Over these 3 weeks, their morning routine has evolved into something resembling family time. Eleanor listens to Connor read, offering encouragement and gentle corrections. Jake drinks his coffee and watches the interaction, amazed by Eleanor's patience and educational insight. This word is extraordinary. Connor sounds out carefully. Extraordinary. Excellent pronunciation, Eleanor says. Do you know what extraordinary means? Something really special that doesn't happen very often. Precisely, like finding kindness in unexpected places. Eleanor's eyes meet Jake's over Connor's head. That's quite extraordinary. Jake understands the subtext. Eleanor is talking about their morning meetings, about Jake's willingness to befriend a homeless woman when other parents avoid or ignore her. What Eleanor doesn't understand is how much these meetings have come to mean to Jake himself. For 25 minutes each morning, sitting on this bench with Eleanor and Connor, Jake feels like he's part of something meaningful. Not just the struggling single father trying to keep his head above water, but someone who's making a difference in another person's life. Dad tell Grandma Ellie about the spelling bee Connor prompts. Connor's been selected for the school spelling bee, Jake explains. It's next Friday. The winner gets to compete at the district level. Eleanor clasps her hands together in delight. How exciting! Have you been practicing every night? Connor says proudly. Dad helps me with the really hard words. Want to hear one perspicacious? That means someone who's really smart and notices things other people miss. Eleanor's smile falters slightly, and Jake catches a flicker of something. Surprise, worry. In her eyes, but the moment passes quickly. That's a challenging word indeed, Eleanor says carefully. You'll do wonderfully in the competition. The first warning bell rings from inside the school building. Connor hugs Eleanor goodbye, as has become their routine, then runs toward the building where other children are gathering. He's a remarkable child, Eleanor says, watching Connor disappear through the school doors. You should be very proud. I am, Jake agrees, though I worry sometimes that I'm not giving him enough. Other kids have things Connor can't have. Opportunities I can't afford to provide. Eleanor studies Jake's face with those intelligent blue eyes. Material possessions are temporary. The love and integrity you're teaching Connor will last his entire lifetime. Trust me, that's worth more than anything money can buy. There's something in Eleanor's tone that suggests personal experience with this distinction, but before Jake can probe deeper, she changes the subject. I should let you get to work. Thank you for breakfast, as always. Jake stands, checking his watch. 8:15 a.m. He has exactly enough time to drive to the job site and clock in before Morrison starts taking notes about tardiness. Same time tomorrow, Jake asks. Eleanor nods, settling back onto the bench with the newspaper someone left behind. I'll be here. As Jake drives to work, he thinks about the rhythm they've established. 3 weeks of daily meetings, and he's learned surprisingly little about Eleanor's background. She deflects personal questions with the skill of someone accustomed to privacy. But he's observed plenty. The way she corrects Connor's grammar suggests teaching experience. Her knowledge of literature and current events implies ongoing education despite her circumstances. Sometimes she uses words or references that seem above the typical educational level of someone collecting cans for grocery money. Most intriguingly, Eleanor's condition seems to be improving. Her clothes are cleaner, her hair better groomed. She's gained a little weight. Either the regular breakfast is helping more than Jake realized, or Eleanor has found additional resources she hasn't mentioned. Jake doesn't question these improvements. He's simply grateful that their friendship appears to be beneficial for everyone involved. Connor has gained a doting grandmother figure who takes genuine interest in his education. Eleanor has gained daily companionship and at least one reliable meal. And Jake has gained the satisfaction of knowing he's making a positive difference in someone's life. What Jake doesn't realize is that he's being evaluated just as carefully as he's observing Eleanor. Every morning for 3 weeks, his character has been tested through small interactions and generous gestures, and he's been passing every test with flying colors. Friday afternoon brings unexpected developments. Jake is loading tools into his truck when his phone rings with a number he doesn't recognize. Mr. Thompson. This is Sarah Chen from Washington Elementary. I'm the after-school program coordinator. Jake's stomach drops. Calls from school usually mean problems. Is Connor okay? Connor's fine, but we have an unusual situation. Our regular childcare provider had a family emergency and had to leave early. Connor mentioned that you have a friend named Eleanor who sometimes watches him. I know it's unconventional, but Connor insisted I call you. He's very worried about how late you'll be getting off work today. Jake checks his watch. 4:30 p.m. Morrison has mandatory overtime scheduled until 7:00 and the after-school program closes at 6:00. Jake can't afford to leave work early, but he also can't leave Connor stranded. Let me make some calls and get back to you, Jake says. His first call is to his neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who sometimes watches Connor in emergencies. No answer. His second call is to his brother in Portland, 5 hours away, and dealing with his own family crisis. Jake's running out of options when he remembers Eleanor's offer from last week. If you ever need help with Connor, I'd be happy to assist, Eleanor had said, after watching Jake struggle with coordinating Connor's dentist appointment around his work schedule. I have quite a bit of experience with children. Jake had thanked her politely, but hadn't taken the offer seriously. Eleanor is homeless, possibly struggling with mental health issues. Certainly not someone he'd normally trust with his son's care. But desperate times require desperate decisions. Jake finds Eleanor at their bench reading a library book while eating what appears to be a sandwich made from cafe leftover pastries. Eleanor, I need to ask you a huge favor. Jake begins explaining the childcare situation. Eleanor sets down her book immediately. Of course I'll watch Connor. It would be my pleasure. Are you sure it would be about 2.5 hours? I can pay you something for your time. Eleanor waves away the offer of payment. Absolutely not. Connor is a delight. We'll have a wonderful time together. An hour later, Jake watches through the school window as Eleanor greets Connor with the kind of grandmother enthusiasm the boy has been missing. Connor's face lights up as he shows Eleanor his latest spelling test, 100% with a gold star sticker. I'll pick him up at your place, Jake starts to say, then realizes he doesn't know where Eleanor lives. In 3 weeks of daily meetings, he's never asked for her address. Perhaps Connor could show me your apartment, Eleanor suggests tactfully. I'd enjoy seeing where he does his homework. Jake hesitates. Their apartment is small, shabby, clearly the home of a struggling family. But Eleanor has never shown judgment about their circumstances, and Connor is already tugging her hand enthusiastically. It's not much, Jake warns. It's your home, Eleanor replies simply. That makes it special. 2 hours later, Jake climbs the stairs to their second-floor apartment, expecting to find Connor watching television while Eleanor sits politely on their second-hand couch. Instead, he opens the door to the smell of something delicious cooking and the sound of Connor's laughter from the kitchen. Dad Connor runs to greet him, flour in his hair and a huge grin on his face. Grandma Ellie is teaching me to make real spaghetti sauce. From scratch, us follows Connor to the kitchen where Eleanor stands at their small stove, stirring a pot that smells like heaven. The kitchen which Jake left cluttered with breakfast dishes and yesterday's mail has been transformed. Everything is clean organized and somehow warmer than Jake remembers. "Welcome home," Eleanor says, as if this is the most natural thing in the world. "I hope you don't mind. Connor mentioned you usually have macaroni and cheese on Fridays, but we found ingredients for pasta with marinara sauce." Jake looks around his own kitchen in amazement. Eleanor has somehow created a meal from ingredients he didn't know they had. The expired canned tomatoes he was planning to throw away have been transformed into rich sauce. The wilted vegetables from the back of the refrigerator have been diced and incorporated into the dish. "It smells incredible," Jake says honestly. "But you didn't have to cook. I just needed you to watch Connor." "Cooking is one of life's great pleasures," Eleanor says, setting the table with their mismatched plates. "And Connor is excellent company. We had fascinating discussions about dinosaurs spelling words and the proper way to fold fitted sheets." Connor giggles. "Grandma Ellie knows everything about fitted sheets. She showed me the secret fold that makes them flat, like regular sheets." During dinner, Jake watches the interaction between Eleanor and Connor with growing amazement. Eleanor listens to Connor's stories with complete attention, asks follow-up questions that show she's genuinely interested, and shares just enough of her own stories to keep the conversation balanced. "When I was your age," Eleanor tells Connor, "I lived in a house with a library that had floor-to-ceiling books. I spent entire days reading about faraway places and exciting adventures." "Were you rich?" Connor asks with 8-year-old directness. Eleanor pauses, considering her answer. "My family was comfortable, yes, but I learned that having things isn't the same as being happy. The happiest moments were usually the simplest ones, like this dinner with good food and good company." After dinner, Eleanor helps Connor with his homework while Jake loads the dishwasher. Through the kitchen doorway, he can hear Eleanor explaining fractions using real-world examples that make Connor laugh and understand at the same time. "If you have a pizza cut into 8 pieces and you eat 3 pieces, how much pizza is left?" 5 pieces. "No, wait, 5/8 of the pizza." "Exactly." "You're getting quite good at this." Jake finds himself studying Eleanor as she works with Connor. Her teaching style is natural, patient, effective. She knows exactly how to challenge Connor without frustrating him, how to praise his efforts without inflating his ego. "These aren't skills someone learns from books," Eleanor Jake says after Connor has gone to bed. "You mentioned experience with children earlier. Do you have kids of your own?" Eleanor's expression shifts, becoming more guarded. "I've worked with children in various capacities over the years. I find them refreshing. They see the world with such honesty." It's not really an answer, but Jake recognizes Eleanor's pattern of deflecting personal questions. Still tonight has revealed new dimensions to their homeless friend. Eleanor didn't just babysit Connor. She transformed their modest apartment into a warm, welcoming home for the evening. "Thank you," Jake says, as Eleanor prepares to leave. Not just for watching Connor, but for making tonight special for him. For both of us, really. Eleanor pauses at the door, her hand on the knob. "Jake, may I say something?" "Of course. You're raising an exceptional child under challenging circumstances. Connor is kind, intelligent, curious about the world. Those qualities come from the love and values you're teaching him every day. Don't ever doubt that you're enough for that boy." Jake's throat tightens. Some days it feels like I'm failing him, like he deserves more than I can give. "Connor deserves exactly what you're giving him," Eleanor says firmly. "Love, attention, moral guidance, and the security of knowing his father will always be there for him. Everything else is just decoration." After Eleanor leaves, Jake sits in his clean kitchen, surrounded by the lingering sense of home-cooked food and the echo of Connor's laughter. For one evening, their modest apartment felt like a real home, instead of just the place where they sleep and store their belongings. Jake doesn't know that Eleanor Walsh spent the evening evaluating more than just Connor's homework skills. She was observing family dynamics, parenting styles, values in action. She was measuring Jake's character, not through grand gestures, but through small moments of patience and love with his son. And once again, Jake Thompson passed every test with flying colors. The envelope arrives on a Tuesday morning, taped to Jake's apartment door like a death sentence. Notice to quit and pay rent, or quit printed in bold red letters across official legal stationery. Jake tears it open with shaking hands while Connor gets dressed for school in the bedroom. 3 months behind on rent. Total amount due $600. Time to pay or vacate 72 hours. Jake sinks onto their second-hand couch, staring at numbers that might as well be written in a foreign language for all the sense they make with his current bank balance of $73.22. Dad. I can't find my spelling notebook. Connor calls from the bedroom. Check your backpack. Jake responds automatically, his voice sounding distant even to his own ears. 3 months behind. How did it get this bad? Jake knows exactly how. The daily cafe visits with Eleanor. $7 a day for 3 weeks equals $147. His truck's brake repair last month. $340. Connor's new shoes when the old ones literally fell apart. $45. The prescription for Connor's ear infection when Jake couldn't afford to wait for their doctor's appointment. $85. Each expense seemed necessary at the time. Connor needed shoes. The truck needed brakes to be safe. Eleanor needed friendship and food. But the cumulative effect has been devastating. Jake does quick math in his head. Even if he keeps his job, and Morrison still hasn't announced which 6 positions are being eliminated, Jake makes $2,800 monthly after taxes. Rent alone is $1,200. Add utilities, food, gas, and Connor's basic needs. And there's nothing left for catching up on back rent. Found it. Connor emerges from the bedroom grinning and holding up his spelling notebook. Grandma Ellie will be so proud. I practiced all the words from the advanced list. Jake forces a smile. Connor's innocent excitement about seeing Eleanor makes Jake's stomach twist with guilt. The money he's been spending on daily cafe visits, money that could have prevented this eviction notice, has made Connor genuinely happy for the first time since Sarah died. How do you weigh your child's emotional well-being against the roof over his head? They drive to school in silence, Connor humming while he reviews spelling words. Jake's mind races through impossible calculations. He could ask his brother for a loan, but Kevin has his own mortgage and 2 kids in college. He could sell the truck, but then he couldn't get to work. He could take a cash advance on his credit card, but he's already maxed out 3 cards paying for Sarah's medical bills. At the school, Eleanor is waiting on their bench as always, but Jake doesn't park. Instead, he slows down and waves through the window. Aren't we getting coffee with Grandma? Ellie? Connor asks, confusion in his voice. Not today, buddy. Daddy's running late for work. It's a lie, but Jake can't afford $7 for cafe breakfast when he needs every penny to figure out how to keep their apartment. Connor waves enthusiastically at Eleanor, who stands and waves back with concern evident on her face. Through the rearview mirror, Jake watches Eleanor's confused expression as they drive away without stopping. After 3 weeks of unbroken routine, this sudden change must seem strange and worrying. At the job site, Morrison gathers the crew for another morning meeting. Jake's hands are still shaking as he puts on his hard hat and joins the circle of workers. Corporates made their decision about layoffs, Morrison announces without preamble. I've got 6 names here. When I call your name, finish up your current tasks and report to HR. Jake holds his breath. Everything depends on this moment. If he loses his job today, they'll be homeless by Friday. Rodriguez, Kowalski, William, Chen Patterson, and... Morrison pauses, consulting his list. Jake's vision tunnels. The whole world comes down to whether his name is next. And Davidson. Jake's knees nearly buckle with relief. He's safe for now. But watching 6 good men clear out their lockers, Jake knows his security is temporary. Construction work is unpredictable, and Morrison clearly has no loyalty to long-term employees. During lunch break, Jake sits in his truck trying to calculate options. He needs $300 to $600 to avoid eviction plus rent for next month. Even if he works overtime every day, even if he skips meals entirely, the math doesn't work. His phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. "Mr. Thompson, this is Eleanor Walsh. I noticed you seemed upset this morning. Is everything all right? If you need to talk, I'll be at our bench after school hours." Jake stares at the message in surprise. He didn't know Eleanor had a phone, let alone his number. Where would a homeless woman get a cell phone? The questions pile up, but Jake pushes them aside. He has bigger problems right now. That afternoon, Jake picks up Connor from school without stopping at their bench. Eleanor is there watching hopefully as they drive past. Connor presses his face to the window, waving sadly at Eleanor, who raises her hand in a small, worried gesture. "Dad, why didn't we stop?" Grandma Ellie looks sad. "We need to get home, buddy. Lots of things to figure out." At their apartment, Jake spreads bills across the kitchen table while Connor does homework. Rent notice, electric bill, phone, bill, credit card statements. A paper monument to financial failure. Connor appears in the kitchen doorway, backpack in hand. "Dad, can we call Grandma Ellie? I want to tell her about my spelling test score." Jake looks at his son's hopeful face, then at the eviction notice. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that his father's kindness to a stranger has contributed to them losing their home? "Maybe tomorrow, Connor. Is something wrong? You seem really worried." Jake considers lying, protecting Connor from adult problems the boy shouldn't have to understand. But Sarah always believed in age-appropriate honesty with their son. "We're having some money troubles, buddy. Daddy might need to work extra hours for a while." Connor nods solemnly, processing this information with the seriousness only children can apply to adult problems they don't fully understand. "Are we going to be okay?" Jake looks at his son's trusting face, then at the impossible pile of bills on the table. "We're going to figure it out," he promises. "We always do." But privately, Jake wonders if this time might be different, if his determination to help Eleanor Walsh has cost him the ability to provide for his own child. Outside their apartment window, Seattle continues its evening routine. Other families are sitting down to dinner in homes they own, planning futures they can afford. Jake stares at the eviction notice, wondering if kindness is a luxury he can no longer afford. Tomorrow he'll have to tell Eleanor that their morning routine has to end. The thought breaks his heart, but keeping a roof over Connor's head has to take priority over everything else, even over doing the right thing. Wednesday morning, Jake oversleeps. The stress of the eviction notice, combined with Connor's questions about why they couldn't visit Grandma Ellie, kept Jake awake until nearly 2 a.m. When the alarm goes off at 600, Jake hits snooze 3 times before dragging himself out of bed. They're running 15 minutes late, which means no time for their usual stop at Eleanor's bench. Jake feels guilty relief as they rush past the school entrance. He spots Eleanor waiting on their bench, scanning the parking lot hopefully, but pretends not to notice. "Dad, there's Grandma Ellie." Connor points out the window. "Can we just say hi? She's been waiting for us." "We're late, buddy. I'll get in trouble at work if I'm not on time." Connor's face falls, but he doesn't argue. Jake hates disappointing his son, but $7 for cafe breakfast represents 14 hours of work after taxes. He can't justify the expense when they're facing eviction. At the job site, Morrison assigns Jake to a crew working on the shopping center's foundation. It's hard physical labor that normally helps Jake clear his mind. But today he can't stop thinking about Eleanor's confused expression, about Connor's disappointment about the growing pile of bills on his kitchen table. During lunch break, Jake's phone rings. The caller ID shows Washington Elementary School. "Mr. Thompson, this is Principal Walker. We need to discuss Connor's behavior this morning." Jake's stomach drops. "What happened?" Connor got into an altercation with another student during recess. It appears the other child made inappropriate comments about the elderly woman Connor calls his grandmother. Connor became quite upset and pushed the boy. Jake rubs his forehead. Connor has never been in a fight before. Is anyone hurt? No injuries, but we need to address this immediately. Can you come in this afternoon? Jake checks his watch. 12:30 p.m. Morrison expects the crew to work until 6:30 today. I'll be there at 3 Hazrias. Actually, Mr. Thompson, there's another issue. Several parents have contacted me about the homeless woman who's been spending time near school property. There are concerns about safety and appropriateness. Jake's blood pressure spikes. Eleanor has never done anything inappropriate. She's been nothing but kind to the children. I understand you've developed a relationship with her, but we have policies about unauthorized adults on school grounds. The school board is discussing the situation. Jake hangs up, feeling like the world is closing in from all directions. Financial crisis, job insecurity, and now Connor is getting in fights defending Eleanor, while other parents try to have her banned from school property. That afternoon, Jake sits in Principal Walker's office, listening to a parade of complaints. Derek Phillips, whose son Tyler was pushed by Connor, stands beside the principal's desk, radiating righteous indignation. My son was traumatized by the encounter with that vagrant woman, Phillips declares. Tyler said she approached him asking for money. Now your son attacked Tyler for telling the truth about the situation. Jake turns to Connor, who sits quietly in a small chair beside him. Is that what happened? Buddy, Connor's voice is small but firm. Tyler said Grandma Ellie was dirty and crazy, and that she probably had diseases. He said homeless people steal children and hurt them. He was being really mean about someone who's nice to everyone. Children shouldn't be exposed to homeless individuals. Phillips continues. It's inappropriate and potentially dangerous. I've spoken with other parents, and we're all concerned about this woman's continued presence near the school. Principal Walker, a kind woman in her 50s, who's dealt with difficult parents for 20 years, tries to mediate. Mr. Thompson, I understand Mrs. Walsh has been a positive influence on Connor, but we have to consider all families' concerns. Eleanor has never asked children for money, Jake says firmly. She's educated, well-spoken, and genuinely kind. The fact that she's temporarily homeless doesn't make her dangerous. Temporarily, Phillips laughs. She's been collecting garbage from our dumpsters for months. How is that temporary? Jake realizes he doesn't have a good answer. He knows very little about Eleanor's actual circumstances, her background, or her plans for the future. For all he knows, Phillips might be right about the timeline. Connor, Principal Walker, addresses the boy gently. Fighting isn't the way to solve problems even when you're defending someone you care about. Do you understand? Connor nods. But Tyler was saying mean things that weren't true. Grandma Ellie would never hurt anyone. She helps me with my homework and teaches me about books. She's not scary at all. After the meeting, Jake drives Connor home in heavy silence. The boy stares out the window, clearly processing the day's events. Dad, are the other parents right? Is Grandma Ellie dangerous? Jake considers his answer carefully. Nobody. But sometimes people are afraid of things they don't understand. Some folks think all homeless people are the same, which isn't fair or true. So why don't we help her find a house? If she had a house, people wouldn't be scared of her anymore. If only it were that simple, Jake thinks. If only he had the resources to help Eleanor, or even to keep his own family housed. That evening, Jake makes a decision he's been dreading. Tomorrow morning he'll have to tell Eleanor that their daily meetings need to end. He can't afford the cafe visits Connor is getting. In fights defending her, and other parents are pressuring the school to ban her from the property. It's the practical choice, the responsible choice. The choice that prioritizes his son's immediate needs over the friendship they've built with a woman who might not be exactly who she appears to be. But as Jake lies in bed listening to Connor practice spelling words in the next room, He can't shake the feeling that he's about to make the biggest mistake of his life. Tomorrow morning will test whether Jake Thompson's commitment to kindness can survive when it conflicts with everything else he's trying to protect. Thursday morning arrives grey and drizzling, matching Jake's mood as he prepares for the conversation he's been dreading. He's rehearsed different ways to explain to Eleanor that their morning routine has to end, but none of them sound less cruel than abandoning someone who's come to depend on their friendship. Connor seems subdued as they drive to school, sensing his father's tension without understanding its source. "Will we see Grandma Ellie today?" Connor asks quietly. "Yes," Jake says, "but we need to talk to her about some changes." Eleanor is waiting on their bench despite the light rain, holding a small umbrella that's seen better days. When she spots Jake's truck, her face lights up with the kind of relief that suggests she was worried about yesterday's missed meeting. Jake parks but doesn't get out immediately. Through the windshield, he watches Eleanor stand and smooth her coat, preparing to greet them with the warm enthusiasm that's become part of his daily routine. How do you tell someone who's brightened your life for 3 weeks that you can't afford their friendship anymore? "Come on, Dad. Grandma Ellie's waiting." Jake takes a deep breath and follows Connor toward the bench. Eleanor's smile falters slightly when she sees Jake's expression. "Good morning," she says carefully. "I was worried when you didn't stop yesterday. Is everything all right?" Before Jake can answer, Connor rushes to Eleanor's side, pulling something from his backpack with obvious excitement. "Grandma Ellie, look. I got 100% on my spelling test, and Mrs. Martinez said I can join the advanced reading group." Eleanor's concern transforms into genuine delight. "Connor, that's wonderful. You've been working so hard." As Eleanor examines Connor's test paper, praising specific words and asking about the meanings, Jake notices something that stops him short. Eleanor is wearing different jewelry today. Small pearl earrings that catch the light despite the overcast sky, and a delicate gold bracelet partially visible beneath her coat sleeve. The accessories are subtle, but they're clearly expensive. Real pearls, not costume jewelry. The kind of pieces that belong in jewelry boxes, not on homeless women collecting cans for grocery money. Jake studies Eleanor more carefully as she talks with Connor. Her fingernails are manicured, not professionally done, but carefully maintained. Her grey hair, despite the humidity, holds a style that suggests recent attention from someone who knows how to cut hair properly. Eleanor Jake interrupts gently. "Could we talk for a minute?" "Privately." Eleanor looks between Jake and Connor, recognizing the seriousness in Jake's tone. "Connor, would you mind feeding the birds by the fountain? I brought some breadcrumbs in my bag." Connor takes the small paper bag eagerly and runs toward the water feature near the school's main entrance, leaving Jake and Eleanor alone on the bench. "I need to be honest about something." Jake begins, then stops. How can he ask Eleanor to explain her apparent improvements when he's about to end their friendship for financial reasons? "Please go ahead," Eleanor encourages. "We can't keep doing this. The daily meetings, the cafe visits. I can't afford it anymore." Eleanor's face goes very still. "I see. It's not about you personally." Jake rushes to explain. "You've been wonderful to Connor, and I've genuinely enjoyed getting to know you. But I'm 3 months behind on rent, and I'm facing eviction. Every dollar has to count right now." Eleanor nods slowly, processing this information. "I understand. Financial pressures can be overwhelming. There's also the situation at school. Some parents are uncomfortable with your presence here. Connor got in a fight yesterday defending you, and the principal is under pressure to restrict access to school grounds. Other parents complained about me," Eleanor says quietly. "It's not a question. They don't know you like we do. They just see someone who looks homeless and make assumptions." Eleanor sits in silence for several moments, watching Connor scatter breadcrumbs for the gathered birds. When she speaks again, her voice carries a note of something Jake can't quite identify. "Jake, may I ask you something? Of course, if you could solve your financial problems today, if money weren't an issue, Would you still want to continue our friendship? The question catches Jake off guard. Of course I would. This isn't about you as a person, Eleanor. It's about what I can afford. Eleanor reaches into her coat pocket and withdraws something that makes Jake's breath catch. A small leather wallet, the kind that holds credit cards and identification. But it's not the wallet itself that shocks Jake. It's the glimpse of cash visible when Eleanor opens it. Bills. Multiple bills. More money than someone collecting recyclables should possess. Eleanor, Jake says carefully. Where did that come from? Eleanor's hand still on the wallet, as if she's just realized her mistake. For the first time since Jake has known her, she looks genuinely flustered. I've been saving. The cans, the bottles. It adds up over time. But Jake's mind is working quickly now, adding up details he's been ignoring. The improved appearance, the expensive jewelry, the cell phone that texted him yesterday, the way Eleanor deflects questions about her background. How long have you been homeless, Eleanor? Another pause longer this time. Eleanor closes the wallet and returns it to her pocket, but the damage is done. Jake has seen evidence that Eleanor Walsh has resources she hasn't mentioned. Circumstances change quickly sometimes. Eleanor says finally. What appears to be one situation might actually be another entirely. It's not really an answer, and they both know it. Jake stares at this woman he's been helping for 3 weeks, wondering how much of what he believes about her circumstances is actually true. Connor mentioned that you have extensive knowledge about literature, art, classical music. You teach him concepts that go well beyond elementary education. You knew how to cook an elaborate meal from basic ingredients. You have expensive jewelry and enough cash to carry in a wallet. Eleanor meets his gaze steadily. Are you asking if I've been honest about my situation? I'm asking if you actually need my help. Because if you don't, if this has all been some kind of test or experiment, then I need to know. I've been sacrificing my family's financial security to buy you breakfast every morning. The words come out harsher than Jake intended, but the possibility that he's been played for a fool makes his chest burn with anger and embarrassment. Eleanor stands slowly, her composure returning. Jake, I want you to know that your kindness has meant everything to me, more than you could possibly understand. That doesn't answer my question. Eleanor looks toward Connor, who's completely absorbed in his bird-feeding mission. Some questions have complicated answers, but I promise you this. Our friendship has been genuine. Whatever else you might doubt about me, don't doubt that. She turns back to Jake, and for a moment her carefully maintained composure cracks. I need to go. Please tell Connor goodbye for me, and that I'm very proud of his spelling test. Eleanor, wait. But she's already walking away, moving faster than Jake has ever seen her move, leaving her small umbrella behind on the bench. Jake sits alone staring at the abandoned umbrella, wondering what just happened. In the space of 5 minutes, everything he thought he knew about Eleanor Walsh has been called into question. Connor returns from feeding the birds, looking around in confusion. Where's Grandma Ellie? She had to leave, Jake says, still processing the encounter. But she forgot her umbrella, and she didn't say goodbye. Jake picks up the umbrella, examining it more closely. The handle is carved wood, elegant and expensive. The fabric is high quality, not the kind of umbrella someone would buy at a convenience store. Dad, is Grandma Ellie really homeless? It's a question Jake can no longer answer with confidence. Jake spends the rest of Thursday in a fog of confusion and anger. Eleanor's mysterious behavior has turned their morning encounter into a puzzle he can't solve, and the uncertainty is eating at him more than the eviction notice. During lunch break, he finds himself Googling Eleanor Walsh Seattle on his phone, though he's not sure what he expects to find. The search yields several results: a retired teacher, a real estate agent, an elderly woman who died 2 years ago, but none of them match the woman who's been sharing coffee with him and Connor. That afternoon, Jake picks up Connor from school without checking their bench. Part of him hopes to see Eleanor waiting there, ready to explain the contradictions in her story. Part of him dreads another awkward conversation where she deflects his questions with carefully worded non-answers. The bench is empty. Connor notices immediately. "Where's Grandma Ellie?" "She's always here when school gets out. Maybe she's busy today," Jake says, though Eleanor has never missed an afternoon appearance in 3 weeks. At home, Connor seems restless and worried. He keeps looking out the window toward the street, as if expecting Eleanor to appear with her shopping cart and warm smile. "Dad, did Grandma Ellie do something wrong?" Connor asks during dinner. "You seemed upset with her this morning." Jake sets down his fork, considering how much truth an 8-year-old can handle. "I think Grandma Ellie might not have been completely honest about her situation." "What do you mean? Remember how she said she was homeless and needed to collect cans for money? I'm not sure that was entirely true." Connor's face scrunches with confusion. "But why would she pretend to be homeless? I don't know, buddy. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Maybe she was testing us," Connor suggests with the matter-of-fact wisdom children sometimes display. Like in fairy tales when magical people disguise themselves as poor people to see if regular people are nice to them. Jake nearly chokes on his water. "What made you think of that? Grandma Ellie knows a lot about fairy tales. She told me that the most important stories are about people who are kind even when it's hard, even when they don't get anything back for being kind." Out of the mouths of babes, Jake thinks. Connor's innocent observation contains more insight than Jake's own frustrated analysis of Eleanor's behavior. Friday morning brings another complication. Jake's phone rings at 6:30 a.m. while he's making Connor's lunch. "Thompson, this is Morrison. Need you to come in early today. We're behind schedule on the foundation work." Jake checks his watch. "How early? Now. Rodriguez's replacement called in sick, and we can't afford another delay." Jake looks at Connor, who's still in his pajamas eating cereal. "School doesn't start for another hour and 15 minutes. I can't leave Connor alone. He's 8. Figure it out, Thompson. This job is hanging by a thread, and so is your position." Jake hangs up, mind racing. Mrs. Patterson isn't answering her phone. His usual backup childcare options aren't available at 6:30 am. The after-school program doesn't open until normal school hours. Then Jake remembers Eleanor's offer to help with Connor any time he needed it. But after yesterday's confrontation, Jake isn't even sure Eleanor wants to see him again, let alone help with an emergency. Still, Connor's safety and Jake's job are both on the line. Jake makes a decision he immediately regrets, but sees no alternative to. He dresses Connor quickly, explains the situation in age-appropriate terms, and drives to the school hoping to find Eleanor at their bench. She's not there. Jake parks and calls Morrison. "I need another 30 minutes. Family emergency. Thompson, I'm warning you. 30 minutes. I'll make up the time, I promise." Jake drives slowly through the neighborhood around the school looking for any sign of Eleanor. He checks the library, the community center, even the downtown shelter. No luck. With no other options, Jake makes a choice that goes against every parenting instinct he possesses. He drives Connor to school an hour early, finds the custodian who agrees to let Connor wait in the library until teachers arrive, and races to the job site. He's 45 minutes late, and Morrison is furious. "This is your final warning, Thompson. One more incident and you're done." Jake works with desperate intensity all morning, trying to prove his value to the crew. But the stress of leaving Connor at school early, combined with worry about Eleanor's disappearance and the looming eviction deadline, makes it impossible to focus. Around 11 a.m., Jake's phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. "Connor is safe and happy. He's with me until you can pick him up after school. Don't worry." Jake stares at the message in shock. How does Eleanor have Connor? The boy was supposed to be in classes all morning. Jake calls the school's main office. "This is Jake Thompson. I need to check on my son, Connor. He should be in Mrs. Martinez's class." "Hold, please." A pause. Then Mr. Thompson. "Connor checked out about an hour ago with his emergency contact." A Mrs. Eleanor Walsh. Jake's blood runs cold. Eleanor Walsh is not an authorized contact. Who signed him out? According to our records, you added her to Connor's contact list last month and provided written permission for her to pick him up when necessary. Jake's mind races. He never authorized Eleanor to pick up Connor. He never even gave the school her contact information. Where did this authorization come from? It's in our system, Mr. Thompson. Signed and dated. Is there a problem? Jake's hands are shaking now. Either the school has made a terrible mistake, or Eleanor Walsh has somehow gained unauthorized access to his son using false documentation. I need to speak with the principal immediately. While Jake waits on hold, his mind spins through increasingly frightening possibilities. Who is Eleanor Walsh really? What does she want with Connor? And how did she get official authorization to remove Jake's son from school without his knowledge? When Principal Walker comes on the line, her voice carries concern. Mr. Thompson, we're looking at the documentation now. The signature appears to match your previous forms, but if you're saying you didn't authorize this, I absolutely did not authorize Eleanor Walsh to pick up my son. I need you to contact the police immediately. Jake hangs up and runs toward his truck, leaving his tools scattered on the job site. Morrison shouts something about being fired, but Jake doesn't care about his job anymore. Someone has his son, and Jake has no idea whether Eleanor Walsh is a friend or a threat. The 3 weeks of daily meetings, the kindness, the genuine affection for Connor, was it all part of some elaborate plan to gain access to his child? Jake drives toward downtown Seattle with his heart pounding, searching for any sign of Eleanor and Connor while calling every emergency number he can think of. The woman he thought was a homeless friend might actually be his worst nightmare come to life. Jake finds them at the Seattle Art Museum. After 2 hours of frantic searching, multiple police calls, and a growing sense of panic that threatened to overwhelm his ability to think clearly. Jake remembers Connor's fascination with Eleanor's stories about art and museums. On a desperate hunch, he checks the SAM, and there they are. Eleanor sits on a bench in the Contemporary Art Gallery, while Connor stands transfixed before a massive abstract painting asking questions with animated gestures. They look like grandmother and grandson enjoying a peaceful afternoon together, not like a kidnapping in progress. Jake's relief is immediately replaced by fury. Connor Salk's voice echoes through the gallery, causing other visitors to turn and stare. Connor spins around, his face lighting up with innocent joy. Dad, look at this painting Grandma Ellie is teaching me about how artists use colors to show emotions. Eleanor stands slowly, her expression calm but watchful. She's prepared for this confrontation. Connor, come here. Now. Jake's tone leaves no room for argument. Connor obeys, but confusion replaces his earlier enthusiasm. Are you mad at me? I thought you said it was okay for Grandma Ellie to pick me up. I never said that. Jake keeps his eyes locked on Eleanor while pulling Connor protectively behind him. Eleanor, we need to talk. Privately. Eleanor nods toward a quiet corner of the gallery. Connor, would you look at the sculpture over there? We'll be right back. Eleanor, don't tell my son what to do. Jake snaps his voice, carrying the strain of the morning's terror. Connor, stay where I can see you. In the corner of the gallery, Jake struggles to keep his voice low enough to avoid causing a scene. What the hell is going on? How did you get authorization to take Connor from school? Eleanor's composure is unnerving. Connor was distressed when his teacher explained that you'd had a work emergency and couldn't pick him up until evening. The school was going to put him in all-day care with children he doesn't know. I offered to help. By forging my signature on school documents. By lying to get access to my child, I didn't forge anything. Jake, the school says they have my written permission on file. I never gave that permission. Eleanor meets his gaze steadily. Perhaps there are things about this situation you don't fully understand. Jake's anger flares hotter. Then explain them. Stop talking in riddles and tell me who you really are. I'm exactly who I've always been. Someone who cares about Connor's well-being and wanted to help during an emergency. That's not an answer. Jake's voice rises despite his attempt at control. Several museum visitors are now openly staring at their confrontation. Eleanor glances around the gallery, noting the attention they're attracting. Jake, perhaps we could continue this conversation somewhere more private. We're not going anywhere until you explain how you got custody authorization for my son. Eleanor sighs softly, and for the first time since Jake has known her, she looks tired. Genuinely tired, as if maintaining some elaborate performance has finally become exhausting. The authorization was legitimate, she says carefully, but the circumstances under which it was arranged are complicated. Stop being cryptic, Jake demands. Who are you, really? Eleanor looks toward Connor, who's pretending to study a sculpture while obviously listening to their heated conversation with growing distress. The boy's face shows confusion and worry as he watches the two adults he loves most argue in increasingly hostile tones. Perhaps Eleanor says quietly, this conversation should happen when Connor isn't present to witness it. Connor is my son, not yours. You don't get to make decisions about what he should or shouldn't witness. Of course not. Eleanor's voice carries a note of sadness. I would never presume to override your parental authority. But you did presume you took him from school without my permission. Eleanor's carefully maintained composure finally cracks slightly. I was trying to help a child who was distressed about his father's absence. I was trying to provide care and comfort to someone I've grown to love deeply. The word love hangs in the air between them. Jake sees the genuine emotion in Eleanor's eyes, the authentic affection she feels for Connor. But the morning's terror has left him unable to process anything except the violation of trust. You don't get to love my son, Jake says coldly. You're a stranger who's been lying to us for weeks. Eleanor recoils as if she's been slapped. Jake immediately regrets the harshness of his words, but the damage is done. Dad Connor's small voice interrupts their confrontation. Why are you being mean to Grandma Ellie? Jake turns to see his son's face creased with confusion and hurt. In Connor's 8-year-old mind, the two most important adults in his current world are fighting, and he doesn't understand why. We're not fighting, buddy, Jake says, forcing his voice to soften. We're just talking about some grown-up things. It sounds like fighting, Connor observes with the brutal honesty of childhood. And Grandma Ellie looks sad. Jake glances at Eleanor, who has indeed gone pale, and appears to be struggling with strong emotions. Connor, we need to go home now, Jake says firmly. Can Grandma Ellie come with us? Like she did the other day. Not today. Eleanor kneels down to Connor's level, her voice gentle despite the tears gathering in her eyes. Connor, I need to go away for a while. But I want you to know that meeting you has been one of the most wonderful experiences of my life. What do you mean, go away? Connor's voice rises with alarm. Where are you going? Eleanor looks up at Jake, and he sees something in her expression that looks almost like a plea for understanding. But Jake is too angry, too confused, too frightened by the morning's events to offer any compassion. Somewhere I can think clearly about things, Eleanor tells Connor. But I want you to keep working on your spelling words and remember to be kind to everyone at school. I don't want you to go away. Connor says, his bottom lip trembling. You're my grandma. I'll always be your friend, Eleanor promises, even if I'm not around for a while. Connor throws his arms around Eleanor's neck in a fierce hug. I love you, Grandma Ellie. I love you too, sweet boy, more than you'll ever know. Jake watches this exchange with a confusing mixture of emotions. Eleanor's affection for Connor appears completely genuine, but the unauthorized school pickup has shattered Jake's trust entirely. Eleanor stands composing herself with visible effort. Jake, I want you to know that everything I've felt for you and Connor has been real. Our friendship, The joy I've found in your company, the gratitude I feel for your kindness. None of that has been false. But you've been lying about who you are. I've been protecting information that I wasn't ready to share. There's a difference. Jake is too exhausted and emotionally drained to pass the distinction. Eleanor. I can't do this anymore. I can't have someone in Connor's life who isn't honest with us. Eleanor nods slowly, accepting the dismissal with dignity that only makes Jake feel worse about delivering it. I understand, she says quietly. You're protecting your son. That's what a good father should do. She looks at Connor one more time, memorizing his face with the careful attention of someone who knows she won't see it again for a long time. Goodbye, Connor. Be good for your daddy. Eleanor walks away then, leaving Jake and Connor standing in the contemporary art gallery surrounded by expensive paintings and the wreckage of a friendship that had become central to both their lives. 2 weeks pass without a word from Eleanor. Jake returns to their old routine, dropping Connor off at school without stopping, picking him up without lingering, maintaining the careful budget that doesn't include daily cafe visits. The eviction crisis has been temporarily resolved through a payment plan Jake negotiated with his landlord, though they're still living paycheck to paycheck. Connor asks about Eleanor every day for the first week, then gradually accepts that Grandma Ellie isn't coming back. But Jake can see the loss in his son's eyes, the way Connor scans crowds looking for a familiar face that never appears. The boy's spelling scores drop slightly. His teacher reports that Connor seems distracted in class, less enthusiastic about reading time. Jake knows his son is grieving the loss of someone who had become genuinely important to him. Jake grieves too, though he tries to hide it. Their morning routine feels empty without Eleanor's warm presence. The apartment feels quieter. Even Maple Street Cafe has lost its appeal. Jake drove by once and saw Eleanor's usual table empty, and the sight made his chest ache with loss. But underneath the grief runs a current of anger and confusion that Jake can't shake. Who was Eleanor Walsh, really? Why had she befriended them? What was the point of the elaborate deception? On a Thursday afternoon, 2 weeks after their museum confrontation, Jake's phone rings while he's picking up Connor from school. Mr. Thompson. This is Thomas Mitchell from the law firm of Mitchell, Barnes & Associates. I represent Eleanor Hartwell, and I need to speak with you about a matter of considerable importance. Jake's heart stops. I think you have the wrong person. I don't know anyone named Eleanor Hartwell. I believe you know her as Eleanor Walsh. Could we meet this afternoon? It concerns your relationship with my client, and a matter that could significantly benefit your family. Jake sits in his truck outside Connor's school staring at his phone after the lawyer hangs up. Eleanor Hartwell. Not Walsh. Even her name was a lie. 30 minutes later, Jake sits in a plush law office downtown, while Connor plays quietly with toys in the reception area. Thomas Mitchell, a distinguished man in his 60s, spreads documents across his mahogany desk. Mr. Thompson. Before we begin, I want you to understand that what I'm about to tell you may come as quite a shock. Jake nods, though he's not sure anything could shock him more than the past 2 weeks have already. My client, Eleanor Hartwell, is not homeless. She is, in fact, one of Seattle's most prominent philanthropists. She's worth approximately $800 million. Jake stares at the lawyer in disbelief. That's impossible. I've seen her collecting cans from dumpsters. Yes, you have. For the past 4 months, Mrs. Hartwell has been conducting what you might call a social experiment. She's been testing whether truly compassionate people exist in our community. Jake's mind reels. You're telling me Eleanor pretended to be homeless to test people? 18 different individuals were presented with opportunities to help Mrs. Hartwell in her assumed homeless persona. You are the only person who consistently showed kindness without expecting anything in return. The words hit Jake like physical blows. Everything, the morning meetings, the cafe visits, Connor's attachment to Eleanor, the financial strain, the eviction crisis. All of it was a test. She was evaluating me, Jake says slowly. For 4 months. 3 weeks, Thomas corrects. Mrs. Hartwell had already identified you as a potential candidate through other observations. The 3 weeks of direct interaction were designed to confirm her initial assessment of your character. Jake thinks about Eleanor's mysterious knowledge, her expensive jewelry, her ability to pick up Connor from school. The signs were all there, but he'd been too focused on helping someone he thought needed assistance to recognize them. What does she want from me? Thomas slides a thick folder across the desk. Mrs. Hartwell would like to offer you a position as Director of Community Outreach for the Hartwell Foundation. Your job would be to identify and assist families facing exactly the kinds of challenges you've been experiencing. Jake opens the folder with trembling hands. The salary figure makes him blink hard. $180,000 annually, nearly 4 times his construction wages. There's also a house, Thomas continues. Mrs. Hartwell owns a property in Madison Park that she's prepared to offer you and Connor rent-free. And Connor's college education would be fully funded through foundation scholarships. Jake stares at documents that would solve every financial problem his family has ever faced. The irony is devastating. The woman he thought he was helping actually possessed the power to rescue him from poverty. Why, Jake asks. Why me? Thomas pulls out a different file. For 4 months, Mrs. Hartwell observed 18 different people in situations designed to test compassion and character. 17 of them failed in various ways. Some ignored her entirely. Others offered token assistance, but lost interest when helping required genuine sacrifice. A few actually called authorities to have her removed from public spaces. And I was different how you consistently chose to help, despite obvious financial strain. You brought your son into the relationship, teaching him about kindness and dignity. You defended Mrs. Hartwell's right to exist in public spaces. Most importantly, you never asked what you could gain from the relationship. Jake thinks about the $7 a day he spent on cafe visits while facing eviction. The choice to include Eleanor in their daily routine despite Connor's teacher's concerns. The way he'd stood up to Derek Phillips when other parents complained about Eleanor's presence. She's been manipulating our entire relationship. Thomas's expression grows more serious. Mrs. Hartwell has asked me to convey her profound apologies for the deception. She understands that her methods were ethically questionable. But she also wants you to understand that her affection for you and Connor was completely genuine. Jake remembers Eleanor's tears at the museum, her obvious love for Connor, the way she'd transformed their apartment into a warm home for one evening. Where is she now, waiting to learn whether you'll consider her offer? Mrs. Hartwell has been hoping for a chance to explain herself personally, but she respects your right to refuse all contact. Jake looks through the office window at Connor, who's building an elaborate tower with wooden blocks while humming softly to himself. His son's entire future could change based on the decision Jake makes in this office. But accepting Eleanor's offer would mean forgiving and massive deception. It would mean trusting someone who's already violated that trust in the most fundamental way possible. I need time to think about this, Jake says finally. Of course. But Mr. Thompson, I hope you'll consider that Mrs. Hartwell's methods, while unconventional, were motivated by genuine desire to find someone worthy of her trust and resources. In a world full of people who would exploit her wealth, she needed to be certain she was choosing someone with authentic compassion. Jake gathers the documents, his mind spinning with possibilities and resentments in equal measure. As he and Connor drive home through Seattle traffic, Connor breaks the contemplative silence. Dad, do you think we'll ever see Grandma Ellie again? Jake looks at his son in the rearview mirror. Connor's hopeful expression contains such love for the woman who's been absent from their lives for 2 weeks. I don't know, buddy. Would you want to see her again? Yes, she's nice, and she loves us, and she tells the best stories. Even if she's not really homeless, she's still Grandma Ellie inside. From the mouths of babes, Jake thinks. Connor has managed to separate Eleanor's deception from her genuine affection, in a way Jake hasn't been able to achieve. That evening, Jake sits at his kitchen table reading through the foundation documents while Connor does homework. The Hartwell Foundation's mission statement focuses on preventing family homelessness through direct assistance, exactly the kind of help Jake's family needed during their recent crisis. The position description outlines work that would use Jake's construction knowledge to evaluate housing conditions, his financial struggles to understand family budgeting challenges, and his experience as a single parent to connect with stressed families. It's not just a job offer. It's an opportunity to prevent other families from experiencing the terror Jake felt when that eviction notice appeared on their door. But accepting would mean forgiving Eleanor for treating his family like test subjects in some elaborate social experiment. Jake thinks about Connor's grief over losing Eleanor, about the 18 people who failed Eleanor's tests about families throughout Seattle who might benefit from foundation assistance. Tomorrow he'll call Thomas Mitchell and give his answer. The question is whether kindness can survive betrayal, or whether some violations of trust are too fundamental to forgive, even when forgiveness comes with an $800 million foundation behind it. 6 months later, Jake Thompson stands in the boardroom of the Hartwell Foundation's downtown Seattle headquarters, presenting his quarterly report to a room full of board members and community leaders. In the past 6 months, we've assisted 127 families facing eviction or homelessness, he says, clicking to the next slide of his PowerPoint presentation. Our success rate for maintaining housing stability is 92%, well above industry standards. The numbers represent more than statistics to Jake. They represent families like the Hendersons, whose breadwinner suffered a heart attack and fell behind on mortgage payments, the Patel family, whose small business failed during economic uncertainty, single mothers, elderly couples on fixed incomes, veterans struggling with medical bills. Each case gets personal attention. Jake continues, "We don't just write checks. We evaluate underlying issues, connect families with job training, provide financial counseling, and follow up for 12 months to ensure long-term stability." Eleanor Hartwell sits at the head of the polished conference table, listening with the focused attention Jake remembers from their breakfast conversations at Maple Street Cafe. She looks different in her tailored business suit and professional demeanor, but when she smiles at Connor, who's drawing quietly in the corner while Jake presents, her expression holds the same warm affection Jake witnessed during their morning meetings. The transition from construction worker to foundation director hadn't been easy. Jake spent his first month learning non-profit management grant writing and social services coordination, but his background in construction proved invaluable for evaluating housing conditions, and his recent experience with financial crisis gave him genuine empathy for struggling families. Most importantly, Jake discovered he had a talent for connecting with people facing desperate circumstances. His ability to listen without judgment, to offer practical solutions instead of bureaucratic runarounds, had impressed even the Foundation's veteran social workers. The Foundation's newest initiative addresses emergency childcare during family crises, Jake explains to the board. Too many parents lose jobs because they can't arrange care during emergencies. Our pilot program provides immediate qualified childcare for up to 2 weeks while families stabilize. Board member Patricia Hawkins raises her hand. What inspired this particular program? Jake glances at Eleanor, then at Connor. Personal experience. Single parents face impossible choices when work emergencies conflict with childcare needs. Sometimes they have to rely on informal arrangements that aren't ideal for anyone involved. Eleanor's slight smile suggests she recognizes the reference to their first meeting when Connor's after-school care fell through and Eleanor stepped in to help. After the meeting, Jake packs up his presentation materials, while Connor shows his latest drawing to Eleanor. The relationship between them had been tentative at first. Connor was confused and hurt by Eleanor's sudden disappearance, while Eleanor struggled with guilt over the deception that had cost her Connor's trust. But children forgive more easily than adults. Within weeks of Jake accepting the foundation position, Connor had concluded that Grandma Ellie was still Grandma Ellie, regardless of her bank account balance. Their weekly dinner tradition had resumed, now held at Eleanor's elegant Magnolia home instead of Jake's modest apartment. Jake had been slower to forgive, but time and proximity had gradually healed the wounds left by Eleanor's deception. Working together daily, watching Eleanor's genuine commitment to helping struggling families, seeing her obvious love for Connor, gradually Jake's anger had transformed into understanding. Eleanor approaches as Jake finishes packing. "Excellent presentation. The board is impressed with your results." "Thank you." Jake has learned to accept praise from Eleanor without the defensiveness that characterized their early professional relationship. "I couldn't do it without your support and the Foundation's resources." Eleanor hesitates, then asks the question that's become part of their weekly routine. "Would you and Connor like to have dinner Sunday? I was thinking of trying that new Italian restaurant in Ballard." Connor looks up from his drawing eagerly. "Can we— Dad, I want to tell Grandma Ellie about my science project." Jake nods. "We'd like that." As they walk toward the elevator, Connor between them chattering about his upcoming science fair presentation, Jake reflects on the journey that brought them to this moment. Eleanor's deception had been manipulative and ethically questionable, but the results spoke for themselves. 127 families had stable housing because Eleanor had identified someone with the character and empathy to run an effective assistance program. The Foundation was preparing to expand to Portland, Spokane, and Vancouver, bringing Jake's model of personalized family assistance to thousands of additional families throughout the Pacific Northwest. Connor's college fund now held enough money to pay for medical school if he chose that path. Jake owned the Madison Park house Eleanor had provided, building equity for the first time in his adult life. Most importantly, they'd gained Eleanor herself, not as the homeless woman Jake had tried to help, but as the authentic friend and surrogate grandmother she'd become. Outside the Foundation building, Eleanor hugs Connor goodbye before climbing into her Tesla. Jake waves as she drives away, then helps Connor into their own car, a reliable Honda Accord that Jake purchased after his first Foundation paycheck. Dad Connor says, as they drive toward their Madison Park neighborhood, "Do you think Grandma Ellie was right to pretend to be homeless?" Jake considers the question carefully. It's the same question he's asked himself hundreds of times over the past 6 months. "I think she made a choice that hurt people she cared about, but for reasons she thought were important. Like when I told you I cleaned my room when I really just shoved everything under the bed." Jake laughs. "Something like that, buddy." Except Grandma Ellie's lie was much bigger and more complicated, but she was trying to find good people to help families, right? So maybe it was okay. Jake thinks about the Henderson family, who sent a Christmas card showing their children in front of the house the Foundation had helped them keep. About Mrs. Chen, an elderly woman whose Foundation-funded home repairs prevented her from having to move to a nursing home. About dozens of families who avoided homelessness because Eleanor's unusual hiring process had identified someone with the right combination of empathy and practical experience. Maybe it was okay. Jake agrees. Sometimes good people have to make difficult choices to do important work. Connor nods seriously, then brightens. "And now we get to help people too. That's pretty cool." "Yes, buddy. It's very cool." That evening, Jake sits on the deck of their Madison Park house, watching the sunset over Puget Sound. Connor plays in their backyard, a luxury Jake never imagined they'd possess, while Jake reviews applications for the Foundation's expansion coordinators. His phone buzzes with a text from Eleanor. "Thank you for a wonderful board meeting today. Your work continues to amaze me. See you Sunday." Jake types back, "Thank you for taking a chance on a construction worker who proved he could learn new things. See you Sunday." He sends the message, then sets his phone aside to watch his son play in their own backyard in front of their own house, secure in the knowledge that Connor's future holds possibilities. Jake could never have provided alone. Sometimes the people who test us are the same ones who save us. Sometimes deception serves a greater truth. And sometimes accepting help from an unlikely source opens doors to helping others in ways we never imagined possible. Eleanor Hartwell had tested Jake Thompson's character and found it worthy of her trust. But in doing so, she'd also given Jake the opportunity to discover his own capacity for meaningful work, for building something larger than his individual survival. A year ago, Jake was a struggling construction worker, one paycheck from homelessness. Today, he's the director of a foundation that's revolutionizing how communities help their most vulnerable families. The transformation wasn't magic. It was the result of one person's willingness to take an unconventional approach to identifying genuine compassion and another person's willingness to extend kindness, even when it cost more than he could afford. In the end, both Jake and Eleanor had learned something important about the nature of family friendship and the kinds of tests that matter most. And Connor Thompson, now 9 years old and preparing for 4th grade, has learned that families come in many forms, but the best ones are built on love, trust, and the willingness to help others whenever possible, even when helping requires forgiving the people who tested your heart to see if it was real. Friends, if this incredible story has touched your heart, I want to invite you to be part of something special. This story shows us that kindness is never wasted, that compassion has the power to transform lives in ways we never expect, and that sometimes the people who test us are the same ones who save us. If you believe in the power of second chances, if you've ever wondered whether your small acts of kindness really matter, please hit that like button right now. Your support helps us bring more stories like this one to people who need to be reminded that good still exists in this world. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell, because we share new stories every week about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Stories about love, hope, redemption, and the beautiful ways our lives can change when we choose compassion over convenience. But here's what I really want you to do. Share this story. Share it with someone who's struggling right now, someone who's lost faith in human goodness, someone who needs to remember that their kindness matters more than they know. Because Jake's story reminds us that we never know who's watching when we choose to help others, and we never know how one moment of compassion might change everything. What act of kindness changed your life? Drop a comment below and tell us your story. We read every single comment, and your experiences inspire the stories we choose to share. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring, and remember, in a world where you can be anything, choose to be kind. You never know whose life you might transform, including your own.